Hey y'all, welcome to Paige's Perspective, where I help you find your inner strength to cope with life. Today's episode is a little love note to the version of you that's gotten really good at tolerating things you never should have had to tolerate in the first place. To the part of you that shrugs something off and thinks, well, it's not that bad, even though it really is. And this one's about the difference between what's normal and what's just familiar, and how easy it is to confuse the two when you've been living in survival mode. Let's talk about how we minimize bad behavior. We normalize dysfunction and call pain just how life is, because we need to stop doing that. I hear it all the time. Someone will share a story. They're clearly hurting. They're clearly overwhelmed, and they want advice and they want to feel less alone. And then immediately they soften it with something like, he's just going through a rough time, or he's a great dad though, or it could be worse, or at least he's not drinking anymore. Or even if he is drinking, they'll say, he's only like this when he drinks. And you can feel it. You can feel how much that person doesn't want to be too much. They don't want to make waves. They don't want to come across as dramatic. They don't want to make a big deal out of something. They minimize their pain. But here's what I want to say. You're not being dramatic. You are not imagining it. You are not high maintenance for wanting basic emotional safety. You're not crazy. It is bad, and your gut is trying to tell you that. You're just someone who's been trained to believe that this pain is part of love, that chaos is part of connection, that walking on eggshells is just life. You feel as though this is the life you've been dealt with, so you just have to deal with it. So you start minimizing and normalizing things. But that's not love, that's not connection, that's not peace, and it's not healthy. That's just what you've gotten used to. But let's talk about why we do this. Sometimes it's how we were raised. Maybe someone else taught you early on that yelling was normal, or that people just say things they don't mean, or that your job is to basically absorb everyone else's emotions and keep things calm. Sometimes it's because you've survived worse. So now anything less awful feels like an improvement, and you think, I should be grateful. It's not like before. But being in an unhealthy relationship will have us normalizing some of the most hurtful things. Sometimes our partners are very good at telling us it's not that bad. It could be worse. At least I don't hit you. There are worse partners out there, and you should feel lucky to have me. They'll say things like this. And these words can be powerful coming from someone that we chose to spend our life with. We begin to feel super confused because we believe them. We think they're right. But our gut is telling us otherwise. We ignore the gut and listen to our partners because we want to trust them. But there is a cycle that goes along with this, which we help you work through in our Independently Strong program. But surviving isn't the same as thriving. And if the new version of the problem still makes you feel unsafe, unseen, or unloved, it's still a problem. And I get it. Acknowledging that means something might have to change, and change is scary as hell. Even bad comfort is still comfort. But here's the truth. You can name something without needing to burn everything down. You can say, this doesn't feel right to me anymore, and just let the truth exist for a while. You don't have to rush to fix it or to label it or to explain it, but you don't need to keep shrinking yourself just to avoid facing it. This is part of the awakening process where you can see things for what they are instead of gaslighting yourself or allowing your partner to tell you what is normal and what's not. They don't know. They are not typically mentally stable enough to comprehend what's normal and what's not. It's just a way to keep their narrative going and to not take accountability. Your gut can tell you the truth way more than your partner can. Listen to it, not them. But let's do a little exercise. There are a few phrases that I want you to watch out for in your own language. These are signs that you might be normalizing or minimizing something that's harmful. We'll make excuses of like, oh, he's just under a lot of stress. And this one shows up a lot. And I get it. Stress is real. But let's be honest. Stress doesn't give someone a free pass to treat people like crap. Everyone's stressed. Most of us don't get to scream or shut down emotionally every time life gets hard. Another phrase would be he just has a temper sometimes. He just has a temper. Okay, but do you feel safe around the temper? Do your kids? Do you find yourself tiptoeing or adjusting your tone, maybe calculating your timing so you don't set them off? Because that's not a temper. That's control by intimidation, even if it's subtle. Another one that I see is, or I've heard before, is it's not like he hit me. Well, we really need to talk about this one because when the bar is he didn't hit me, we've already accepted way too much. Emotional abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, neglect. These may not leave marks, but they absolutely leave damage. And just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's not real. Another phrase I hear is he didn't mean to say it like that. Intent matters a little, but impact matters more. If every time you bring something up, it gets flipped back on you, or you end up comforting them after they hurt you, that's not healthy communication. That's just deflection. Another phrase is, he's just emotional. Okay, but so are you. So is every human being. Emotions are not the issue. What matters is how someone handles them. If his emotions only ever show up as anger, mood swings, guilt trips, emotional shutdowns, or maybe they show up as super highs too, and if you've always end up being the one who backs down, tries to make peace, you tiptoe around, that's not emotional intelligence. That's emotional instability. There's a difference between someone who has emotions and someone who weaponizes them. If they cry to avoid accountability, if they explode every time you bring something up that's important, if they use feelings like a shield to avoid change or growth, that's not sensitive. That's manipulation dressed up as vulnerability. And I know that sounds harsh, but this is how emotional immaturity hides in plain sight. So being emotional is not a pass for poor behavior. You deserve connection. You deserve to have a hard conversation without being punished for it. You deserve emotional safety. So no, it's not enough to say, oh, they're just emotional. The better question is, do I feel safe expressing my emotions too, or are his the only ones that matter? It's a powerful question. Another phrase that I've seen is, oh, he was just raised like that. Okay, sure. A lot of people were, but being raised in dysfunction is a reason, but it's not an excuse. We all have a responsibility to grow. And at some point, unhealed trauma becomes unaccountable behavior. There is a line. Another one is he only acts like this when he's under the influence. I need you to really hear me on this one. The fact that someone's behavior is connected to substance use does not make it excusable. It actually makes it more urgent because addiction might explain why the behavior happens sometimes, like it amplifies it, but it does not erase the impact of that behavior on you, on your kids, on your home, on your safety. It might explain it, but it doesn't excuse it, especially if there's no real plan to stop. There's no treatment, there's no ownership, no sustained effort, just a cycle of mess up, say sorry, and repeat. And if you're stuck in that cycle hoping the real version of them is who they are when they're sober, but that version only shows up part-time, you're still living with the full-time consequences. Substance use is not a hall pass for chaos. It's not your job to tolerate abuse until they feel like getting better. It's not noble to wait it out, especially if you're the one holding all the broken pieces. You can have empathy and still have boundaries. You can love someone and still say, this is not healthy and I'm not willing to live like this anymore. Now, I'm not saying that these phrases are never true. People do have bad days. People are human. People grow. We've all been here. But if you're saying these things every week, if you're constantly rewording your reality to make it easier to accept, that is not peace. That is self-betrayal. And it's not about whether someone meant to hurt you. It's about whether they did hurt you. And if that hurt is being repaired or repeated. There's a big difference. But I want to touch on the idea of familiarity. You know, we gravitate toward what we know, even when we know, even when what we know is painful. There's a lot of W's in there. Please bear with me. If you've been surrounded by unpredictability, anger, avoidance, or guilt, you know, those things might actually feel like home. It's familiar. And then whenever you whenever you meet peace, when you're in a peaceful state, it might feel boring. And when someone actually respects your boundaries, you might think, what's their deal? That's just your nervous system still learning what safe actually feels like. So if something feels off, but you can't explain why, pause. Don't explain it away. Don't gaslight yourself into staying somewhere you're constantly bracing for the next emotional hit. Just ask yourself, if my best friend told me this exact story, would I tell her it's okay? Because often we're kinder to others than we are to ourselves. And here's something I want to say loud and clear, because I see it all the time and I understand it and I feel you. But please hear me out here. I've seen it'd be easier if he cheated, or it would if it got physical, at least I'd have a reason to go. And I need you to hear how heartbreaking that is. We've been so conditioned to only recognize pain when it shows up with bruises or betrayal that we forget. Emotional abuse is abuse. The slow erosion of your confidence, the constant second guessing of your reality, the way your voice shrinks over time, the way you feel like you're always too sensitive or too much or not enough. It's not just in your head, it's in your nervous system. It's in the way you walk around on eggshells in your own home. It's in the way your body flinches, and not from fists, but from tone, from silence, from the look, from the way love keeps coming and going like a game of emotional hot and cold. And I'll say this plainly, if you're waiting for something more obvious to happen, something more valid or dramatic to justify your pain, please stop. You don't need an affair to say that this isn't working. You don't need it to get physical to say that it hurts. You don't need to be destroyed in order to decide that you deserve better. Because emotional abuse, it doesn't just go away. It gets inside of you. It rewires how you think, how you love, how you trust, how you see yourself. And those scars, they may not be visible, but they're real and they're there. So if you're sitting here thinking it's not that bad, I want you to ask yourself this. If nothing ever changes, is this what I want for the rest of my life? That question alone might be the answer you've been avoiding. And here's what I want to leave you with. You don't have to be ready to leave. You don't have to be ready to fix it, but you do have to be honest with yourself. Honest about what's hurting. Honest about what you've been calling fine just because it's all you've known. Honest about the fact that something inside of you has been whispering, something's wrong. This isn't it. You deserve to feel emotionally safe. You deserve to stop explaining your pain away. And you deserve a love that doesn't ask you to constantly shrink yourself to survive it. You're not being dramatic. You're just finally waking up, and waking up is brave. That is all I have for this week. Until next time, I'm Paige. Bye.